Whenever anything used to happen that made me feel upset or worried or glad or guilty, I would immediately uh, go to the kitchen, open up usually the freezer for some ice cream or the cabinet where there was a jar of Nutella waiting for me, um, or some sort of crispy, crunchy chips or something like that. Um, and it felt like it was beyond my control to not do that. And this today, I want to share with you how I actually stopped running to food to solve all my problems and to make me feel better. Um, so I'm glad you're here if this is something that I think you will be useful for you. I am Kay Locke Cope. I am a creator, I'm a coach, and I'm someone who I'm creating this channel and I'm creating these videos and what are also turning out to be podcast episodes because uh, I think the learning of my life is something that well was hard won, first of all, right? Hard earned. And secondly, I think something that you may benefit from if you are perhaps in a time of transition in your life, where you're feeling like you'd like to bring some intention to what's coming next instead of kind of being bumped around by circumstances or others. Really to trust yourself and to trust ourselves is and to know that we're worthy, we're you know deserving of what we would like to create and have, and who we are is deserving and worthy. So we're going to dive into one particular aspect of that today, and that is how to stop using food as kind of an emotional comfort, um, and uh, and hopefully that this will be helpful for you. So thanks for being here. Let's jump in. So I have three ways to do this. And I think it might be worth exploring what it really feels like. So just for you to know, to, make sure this is kind of aligned, I guess. And I think that my curiosity is like, when do you find yourself going to the cabinet and opening up, um, you know, opening up the jar of, uh, well, in my case, it was Nutella, and I wish to say this too. That's not Nutella's fault, or the people who make Nutella. It's on me to have that control. So, but when do you find yourself going to the cabinet to get what is comfort food for you? I'm curious. For me, it was when, um, if I think bored is a really good way of saying it. So in the evenings, a lot of the time, or in the sort of late afternoon, bored, or maybe even tired. Um, when perhaps this is familiar to you, when you're wrapping up with what you've been doing all day, and there are some kids or other, your partner or spouse is kind of around, and there's this part of the day, I think it's about 4 to 5 p.m., which I remember learning was called the witching hour, which is where everybody's maybe a little cranky. Everybody's kind of done for the day, and yet, and hungry, ready for dinner, and um, just all the responsibilities that can feel like they fall on us to make those things happen. But also we're cranky, right? We're hungry, we're tired. So that was often a time where I would run to food. Um, and the other time that it happened, or I noticed it happening, was when I felt if somebody upset me, if somebody said something that hurt my feelings, um, if somebody told me, a judgment or a belief about me that they have that made me feel sad or guilty. If somebody spilled over about what was going on in their life, and then I felt like bad about it, and how do I take, I would take responsibility for it emotionally, even if there was nothing I could do. And I would go running right to the kitchen. And before I knew it, I had finished a pint of ice cream, or I had finished an entire bag of chips just for the crunchy feeling. And it didn't, I didn't feel in control, and I really didn't like that. And um I remember sometime in the years before I figured out how to do it, I remember watching, meaning how to stop running to the kitchen for food. I remember watching Brene Brown. I think it was her very first TED Talk. I feel like Brene Brown has now done several, but anyway, this was the first one. And she talked about how people have two sides of a coin, was my memory of her speaking, that like that vulnerability on one side of a coin amounts to shame on the other side of the coin. Like if we're taught that when we open up about something going on for us, that we ought to be ashamed of that, right? That wish or that hope or that dream. Um, that is a hard thing for human beings to encounter. Like feeling ashamed is not a great place to create from, whether you're trying to create a happy feeling inside yourself or you're trying to create a good life for you and for others, for your loved ones, right? Or you've got a dream and you're trying to bring that into being. Whether it's a book or art or any number of things that we human beings are prone to create when we're in a good place, right? And what we would do about that, Brene Brown suggested, and her research was was evidence of, is that when we feel ashamed, we want to numb ourselves. And so what we do is we numb ourselves. And she talks about something that isn't in my personal um, experience, but people numb themselves with alcohol, with cigarettes, with controlled substances, with things that just take them out of themselves because they want to be numb. They can't bear the feelings. And that is very similar to my relationship with food. What it used to be was I would be wanting to numb myself, and um, it wasn't fun, and it didn't. The other thing that I didn't notice this until later, but it didn't really work. Like I would end up finishing a donut or three, or a jar of Nutella or an ice cream, like a pint of ice cream or something. And I would feel worse. And then I would feel more ashamed. And that had me in a cycle of wanting to numb myself more. And especially if there were things going on in my life or the lives of my family, um, there were lots of opportunities to want to numb myself, I guess is how I'll say it. So uh, if that's your experience, I just want to take a moment and extend compassion to you. It is it is something, I think, to be able to even approach and look at. I think it takes a lot of bravery to look at our own behavior and acknowledge it for what it is. And I think it takes even more courage to be able to love ourselves and give ourselves grace about the things that we do. Like if your best friend was saying to you, I just don't know why I can't stop myself, from eating all the time, and I see how bad it is for me, and we would have so much love and compassion for them, and we would be so wishing them grace for themselves, right? It's challenging to do it for ourselves, and um if that's kind of where you are in that challenging spot, well, I have a big huge hug for you right from my heart. I've been there. I know what it's like. I also know that we can do it. We can overcome this and get to a place where we feel empowered and we feel resilient and we feel worthy and deserving. We feel like we can be vulnerable with ourselves without feeling shame about that. So this is how I went from the first part of that, where I felt ashamed and I felt like I wanted to numb myself, to the second part, where I really feel um, empowered and I can see my own resilience and how I've grown it. And I can give myself grace, and I can love myself and feel worthy. So that's the journey that I I'm celebrating you for being on, and that I am uh feeling glad that we're here together as we do this, right? So I see 3 steps that helped me break this pattern and continue to break it. Like, um, it's not that I don't still feel, it's not that I don't encounter things that knock me, or that, you know, it's not that I don't ever feel shame, because sometimes I still do, but my response to it is very different now than it was then. So, the first part of that was, I simply, when I wanted to stop running to food to solve all my problems, I noticed the impulse. Like, I started to become aware of, like, the self-talk and what was going on inside myself. And I could just notice and be curious about, if I'm standing here with a spoon and a pint of ice cream, how did I get here? Like, what was the process, like, by which this has happened? So just noticing was really the first thing, and noticing without guilt. Like, it's just I would say noticing without any judgment, because it's not about um, we're not doing anything at this point except noticing. And we can continue to notice. For example, if we decide to put the ice cream away, we can notice how it feels to, boy, wish we were eating that ice cream, and how hard it is. We can tell ourselves, right, this is fucking hard. This is challenging. Ugh. It's okay to have those feelings. It's great. We do have them. So it's great to be able to acknowledge them, and just notice them, right? And then how does it feel when we do, something that feels out of our control? How do we feel? Like, just noticing without any judgment is the first part of this. And the second part is, I keep consulting my notes, which are over here. I let my brain have a tantrum about it. I just let it feel the way that it feels. I think one part of this for me is, I've noticed that, or I guess my learning is that, I am not my thoughts, meaning, like, there's this part of my brain that is set up to, well, I mean, like, our minds are this really wonderful tool. I just did recently, I have a podcast called Art, Creativity, and Wellbeing. And recently I interviewed a therapist named Bill Dwinells. And his focus is called solutions focused therapy. And what that means is, there's this really powerful neuroscience that he understands and helps his patients understand about the neuroplasticity of our brains. And the way that he talked about it was that, like, our brain will notice patterns and notice what we're bringing our attention to, and, like, serve us more of that. So when we understand that, we can also, we have this real power where we can tell our brain to focus on what we want it to focus on for us, right? So um so when I can hear the noise inside myself, if I decide to, I have so many memories of standing in front of the snack cabinet and not opening it, and just hearing what was going on in here, that my brain really, really, really wanted to have that. And I could just observe that. I didn't have to be pulled into it, which I think is really what solutions focused therapy. Not that I'm a therapist, I'm a coach, so but I think they're closely related. I work with therapists often, and my favorite kind of therapist to work with is one like Bill Dwinells. Meaning, uh, my client is when I have a client who is also in therapy, I feel a great resonance when the therapy is that which works for them, and I feel very uh, comfortable working alongside a therapist, for a client. Um, so yeah, here I am standing at the snack cabinet, not opening it, and my brain is losing its mind. And again, I would revert to step one, which is just notice, like, because I can be curious about how long will my brain do this? And will anything change as my brain is having its temper tantrum? Like, and what I started to notice, and my work originated with early childhood education with very young children. And when we are, I would say, shaping the behavior of a child, it's really great to help them discover their own resilience by safely allowing them, like, so having them be in a safe place where they can have a temper tantrum, right? Where they can really scream, where they can pound something if that's what they need to do to get this energy out, like a bean bag, for example, or a pillow or something like that. Having these feelings is part of the human experience, and allowing children to cry, to be angry, to feel those feelings in a safe way, um, is wonderful, because what happens is eventually, like, they stop crying, they stop punching, they stop because they've allowed this energy out. And so when I am standing, or was standing, at the snack cabinet and my brain was having a temper tantrum, I started to be able to have confidence that yes, my brain could figure it out. And I mean, sometimes I would go and do something else, right? I would be like, I would be listening and noticing the self-talk, and I would say, "Oh, maybe a walk would be a really good way to feel better right now," or maybe it's time to go make a painting. Maybe it's time to um, bring my attention to something positive, because I'm again referencing the neuroscience. Our brains really love giving us more of what it perceives we are looking for. So if I'm out on a walk and I'm listening to the birds, and I'm or watching the stars or something like that, um, like, our brains work to to help us feel more of that. At the same as they work if I'm standing in front of the snack cabinet, or if I'm actually eating something, like, they work to give us more of that which we are already experiencing. Um, so giving my brain something positive to focus on, instead of kind of letting the clinging, like, fester, the sort of yuckiness fester, was really, really helpful. So that's step two. One is noticing the impulse. Two is letting my brain have a temper tantrum about it. And three is I gave myself grace. I learned how to give grace for the learning journey that I'm on, rather than feeling like a bad student who's getting an F again because they finished all the potato chips or something. I was never a potato chip person, but anyway, tortilla chips were a biggie. Um, yeah, being able to, again, you'd give grace if someone that you loved, if your best friend shared with you that they had just had half a dozen donuts and they feel sick about it now. Like, you would give them a hug and you would give them love. Giving ourselves that love and giving ourselves those hugs makes us feel better. And I can remember one particular evening, I I did a solo hike across northern England in May of 2023. And that was, I mean, to go back a little further, without giving you my whole life story, I lost the ability to walk in 2011, more than a few steps, and I needed a wheelchair for 12 or 18 months while I was regaining that ability. And to be able to do this hike across England was amazing, and there was a lot of growth in that. And there was the day of my longest the day of my longest walk was 15.8 miles I walked in one day. Um, and that day, I was so excited and so proud of myself that evening. And I was messaging and conversing with my coach. he helped me through the training. He really helped me. It was so much more than the physical training, and he was a great support as I um, got myself ready, became the person who could do this hike. And so we're messaging I'm sitting in a restaurant in England and he's wherever he is in the world. And I'm like, I did it. And, I did it with a lot of joy. And the other thing that happened that day was I encountered some cows. I had what was a scary to me, but not empirically scary situation with a bunch of cows. There was about a quarter-mile field, and the path, the coast to coast path is the one I was on, went right through the middle of this field. And there were many, many, many pairs of mamas and babies. It was May. So a lot of these babies had just been born, cows and calves. And we're told, don't go near them, like don't get between a mother and a baby, stay away from them, walk the perimeter of the field if you can. I couldn't even see the perimeter of this field. It was so vast. And all the cows were like along the path in the middle. And the babies were coming. They were curious. They wanted to find out about me. So I actually went out into the field, left the path a little bit to try and get away from some of them, and brought myself back. And all the while I was saying to myself, peaceful cows, peaceful K, peaceful cows, peaceful K. But I was quite terrified. And I got to the other side of this finally. And I remember closing the gate. Like there's a gate to keep the cows in the pasture, right? And I just put my head down on the gate and I started crying. I was like, I can't keep doing this. So there was this real high of having done that day's a lot of walking, quite vigorous hiking, and this experience with the cows. And it really threw me, like both the good and the bad really sort of threw me, or the positives and the negatives of this. And my coach's name is Andrew. So I spoke with him a little bit about the cows as well as all the excitement. And we wrapped up with that. And I thought to myself, I had the thought, 15.8 miles deserves dessert. And I ordered dessert. And I felt kind of like, I don't know if you've ever had sort of, you wake up the morning after you've had a little too much alcohol and you're like, oh, like that feels yucky. A past me would have brought so much judgment on myself for having that dessert, which was not had in an energy that I usually I just enjoy dessert because food is a friend and I enjoy dessert now, right? It's part of a nourishing food way for me. Whereas it used to be, eating for numbness or whatever. And I remember waking up the next morning and just saying to myself, okay, this happened. And now you're going to go out into the world and you're going to do this day's hike. Um, and how will I do that? And really the solution for me was to give myself grace. Actually, if I think about it, I did these three, right? I noticed the thoughts. I remembered the thought, 15.8 miles deserves dessert. And then I let my brain do what it was going to do. Like I felt all this guilt land on me and like just the bad feelings of doing something that I had really not wanted to do, but I did it anyway. And then I remember thinking, you know what? Like, okay, that happened. You're on a learning journey here. And you can give yourself grace. And that's what I did. And it just felt so good to have the negative stuff just letting go. And every time I approached, if I had a thought like that afterwards, I could acknowledge it. I could let my brain think it through, and then I could say, all right, like I'm going to make a different choice this time because I don't, that's not how I want to live being controlled by my emotions or feeling like I have to eat this to be numb or whatever. And that was, I think maybe there's been in the 2 intervening years since I did that hike, maybe there's been one other time that I allowed myself to get pushed off, by feelings and eat something for emotional reasons. But most of the time, I feel in concert with myself. I feel like if I'm going to eat this, it's going to be from a nourishing place. And there's real power in that. So that's what I'm hoping can happen for you is that you feel um, that that you try these steps and that if they work for you, or if they don't, that it sparks something that does work for you, so that you know that you have the choice and you have the control. to really enjoy it, your life, and also sometimes, as feels good, enjoy a treat or enjoy a snack. Um, it is a I would say it was challenging to get here, but oh my good golly, does it feel nice. It feels really good inside. So, um, yeah, I'm cheering for you as you are on this path. And uh, I would say if you've got questions or if you've got thoughts, please share them. Share them right here in the comments. And if you, I mean, even on a wider scale, so if there's something going on for you that is interrupting your ability to trust yourself or stay true to yourself, let me know because I would love to make a video or make an episode specifically to address what's going on for you. And in the meantime, I'm going to say thank you so much for being here. If you'd like to kind of extend your learning, I have opened up uh, a a, a community, a group in the school platform. So the group is called Dreamers and Doers, and the link is in the show notes if you'd like to come and see what we're doing there, what we're about. If you feel like you'd like to do a little more dreaming, a little less doing, or if you feel like you've got a dream that you'd really like to take some action on. Um, we'd love to have you in there. I'd love to see you. So, um, and again, really excited to spend this time with you today and looking forward to when we are here together again. Cheers. Talk to you soon. Bye.